All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another edition of our Franchise Your Business podcast and webinar series. My name is Tom Dufour. I'm the founder and CEO of Big Sky Franchise Team. And as we have folks loading into the live session here, I always like to use this as a good opportunity to share for anyone that is new to us or joining us for the first time. You can subscribe to our podcast at Franchise Your Business. It's just called Franchise Your Business. You'll find it on your most podcast services out there, Apple, Spotify, or whatever you listen to. Or subscribe to our YouTube channel where you get all of our content. We have over 600 webinars, podcasts, videos, and content that we are updating literally every week with great pressing, relevant information. And that's just search for our company name, Big Sky Franchise Team. Big Sky Franchise Team is the great place for you to start there. And then lastly, as we're loading in, feel free to subscribe to our second podcast called Multiply Your Success. So our Multiply Your Success podcast is really geared toward that weekly dose of inspiration and motivation. And our podcast here that we're doing with the Franchise Your Business session is really practical and focused on getting stuff done and being effective and better as a franchisor and as a business leader. Now, our episode today is really geared on this idea of beyond training, using monthly masterminds to drive franchisee growth. So how can masterminds, you maybe for someone tuning in here, you might be a member of a mastermind group for your own business, but now that you're franchising, what about your franchisees? And if they were to join one of these generic mastermind groups, how's that really going to help them find success in their system? Well, our guest today is Paul Masters, whom I've had the good fortune of knowing Paul for many years. In fact, we actually met at a mastermind group.
That's right.
What was it, 6 or 7 years ago? And
Yeah.
so it's been a while, and I'll give you a little overview on Paul. Now, Paul is the founder of Perissos. Paul pronounced that. I knew I was going to botch
That's
that
okay.
word.
It's Perissos. Perissos.
Perissos, thank you. Perissos Leadership Coaching and owner and CEO of Anago of Atlanta. As an executive coach and entrepreneur, Paul helps business owners, leaders, and franchise professionals gain clarity, strengthen execution, and build scalable, profitable companies. His coaching focuses on strategy, accountability, leadership development, and sustainable growth. Since acquiring Anago of Atlanta in 2017, Paul has led the company through sustained expansion and top 10 performer recognition within the franchise system. And for those of you that are new or familiar with franchising, know that a top 10 franchisee is not something easy to come by and going through that system. Prior to Anago, Paul co-founded Earnest Communications, a telecommunications company, later expanded into IT and mobility services, and successfully sold that in 2013. He holds a bachelor's degree, an MBA, and an ICF associate certified coaching designation, which is no small feat to achieve. That is the top of the top for coaching certifications. So, Paul, with that being said, I'd love to get this conversation started about mastermind groups.
Let's do it, Tom.
Perfect. So, Paul, let's talk a little bit for someone that's tuning in, just generically, what a mastermind group is and what are some of
Yeah,
the key attributes or benefits to one?
sure. Well, I think it's helpful if you don't mind, maybe just to give a little bit of context and background. So, um, when I was actually in business with my father-in-law for 21 years, I worked for him for 6 years in a company that he founded, and then for 15 years together in a company that we co-founded. And so when we sold that company, I worked for the company that bought us for about 3 years, had a contract with him. And during that time, I met a franchise consultant. And so I became intrigued with the concept of franchising. And over the last 10 years, have owned and operated three different franchises, two of which are still alive and kicking. One didn't go so well. We'll talk about that one a little bit later, hopefully. But in over the time of investing in those franchises, I sort of learned and saw that most franchise systems do a really good job of kind of getting you in, getting you onboarded, getting you trained up, coached up, and then out the door and running. But what happens is, 6 months, 12 months in, you kind of hit a wall. And so it's not necessarily the franchisor's fault. I mean, you know this better than I do. I think I read a statistic that half of all franchise systems have less than 25 units. And so those franchise systems don't always have the infrastructure for ongoing coaching and development. So they tend to spend probably, you know, 10% of their time with the new franchise owners coming into the system, or I mean, they spend the bulk of their time with the 10% of new franchise owners coming in, or the 10% of franchise owners that are struggling or are in danger of going out of business. So sort of that bell curve, the middle 80%, just sort of are left to figure it out with annual conferences and maybe webinars and things like that. But it kind of feels like you're on your own. I experienced it and I was really shocked and surprised to feel the isolation of being a franchise owner. I describe it as feeling like I was on a desert island, and I did not expect that at all. And so, in my coaching practice, what I've tried to do is help, mitigate that with the franchise systems I work with by creating these mastermind groups where what I like to say is it creates a space where franchise owners can commiserate, celebrate, and collaborate because we're just missing the opportunity with, ongoing, consistent kind of peer interaction to be able to do those things.
Well, I think that's a great overview, and even as you were describing kind of that feeling of being isolated as a franchisee, I recall even in my own when I was a franchisee that I had very similar sentiment. However, to kind of spin into some of what you're talking about with this mastermind piece. I know that I had a franchisee in one of the networks that I joined up with. He was a mature franchisee, he was doing well, and he kind of took me under his wing. And he really fundamentally changed my whole trajectory and growth. And corporate
Mm.
did exactly what you described. I got signed up, I got trained, I got everything I needed to launch, and I got things kickstarted. But there was something different when the advice or the suggestions were coming from another franchisee that just seemed more valuable to me. So why might that be, Paul?
Yeah.
Versus corporate that's trying to help you also.
Yeah, I think there's something pretty powerful about, it's not top-down teaching or instruction. It's peer-led facilitation. So it's real-world problem solving. It's knowing what's going on in the field. It's, what opportunities are you trying to explore? What problems are you trying to solve? It takes it sort of from I'll say theoretical, maybe what you read in the manual to actually what's happening in your business every day. And you tend to think you're the only one that it's happening to or for, right? But then when you get in a group of your peers, you start to realize, oh my gosh, we're all dealing with the same things. And there's something powerful about just the group being able to talk about what is happening with them. Sort of that me too, and you think, no one in the world is experiencing this today.
Yeah. Oh, that's very, very well said. Well, let's talk about let's circle back around to that initial question about mastermind groups, and
Yeah.
let's talk through what is a mastermind group just from a high level. What in the world is it for someone who's like, what do you mean mastermind groups? What are you talking about here?
Yeah, so it's really just a consistent kind of cadence of a group, not a large group, but probably somewhere between 6 and 12 franchise owners meeting together on a consistent basis with the groups that I help lead their masterminds. We meet once a month. We meet generally for about 60 to 90 minutes at a time. It is not teaching, is not instruction necessarily. It's more facilitating. It's more peer led. There is structure to it. We talk about business snapshots, reviewing key metrics, roundtable problem solving. But really, the beauty of it is that we're able to flex based on what the group needs at any one time in whatever season that they're in.
Well, that's really helpful. So this mastermind group, and there are, from my understanding, lots of mastermind groups out there. And in fact, if you're an owner or a business, a franchisee or what have you, chances are you've been contacted or solicited to join one or more of these groups through LinkedIn or
Right.
maybe networking groups that you're a part of. But how is a franchisee mastermind networking group different from, say, just a general business owners mastermind group? For example, where you and I met, it was just and there was nothing wrong with it. It was a fantastic group that
Exactly.
we were a part of. But how is that different from what you're talking about here?
Yeah, and I'm in a mastermind group today myself, and so um, there's just something different about being in a group of franchise owners where you're all in the same system. There's a depth of understanding that there's no real explanation of what the problem is. Everyone just intuitively knows what the problem is, and so you're not necessarily trying to take what you do in your plumbing business or in your IT business. Not that there's anything that's wrong with that, and trying to sort of overlay it on top of what the problem is in a franchise business. There's this intimacy of like you're all dealing with the same things, and you're just able to go so much deeper, so much faster, I think, because of that.
Well, Paul, you said in a group like this, it helps to commiserate, to celebrate, and there was a third C. What was a third one?
Collaborate.
Collaborate. I knew there was another C rhyming word in there.
Yep.
I didn't
Yep.
jot it down fast enough.
I
Okay.
haven't trademarked it yet, so you may beat me to it.
Well, let's talk. Let's go through this, okay? The
Yeah.
commiserate. So, as a franchisor, I think there's a fear in most franchisors, and I've seen it in the clients I've worked with for over 20 years. No one ever really talks about it, but there's kind of this unsettling or unnerving fear that one day the troops are going to kind of circle the wagons and come back on you as the franchisor. Now,
Hmm.
I rarely see such a situation occur. So when you say commiserate, someone who's
Yeah.
tuning in might say, Paul, are they circling the wagons? What's going on here? Do I need to be worried? So let's talk about each one of these. So, what do you mean commiserate? What are they
Yeah.
doing there?
I think it's just, it's the first thing I think about is you haven't done it correctly if, as a franchise owner, you don't have that, oh no, what have I done moment. When you think about leaving your corporate career, plunking down tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then you look around and you think, oh no. So I think everyone's had that moment, whether they want to say it out loud or not. And that's probably the first place to start by commiserating is, yes, you're not alone. I too thought I had that moment where I thought I have made a terrible choice. So that's probably the first thing that I think about. The second thing is really just, the sort of the rhythms of business. You lose accounts, you get beat out by a competitor. It's you have your top sales rep resign on you all of a sudden. I mean, just things that go on. You just have someone who has been there, done that. They know exactly how you feel. And I guess it's maybe the old saying, misery loves company, but it's just someone who can identify with whatever the loss of the day is in your business life.
Oh, that's I think that's very well said. I definitely think back to what owning my franchise, and when I would have those moments with other franchisees, exactly as you're describing, right? Where it's you have this connection point of they just immediately understand, and they're not really solving the problems. It's just someone that you're talking to that went through the same thing a year ago or 2 years ago, and they're just listening, and that's it. It's just kind of almost maybe a form of therapy, or just kind of a reset or a cleansing a little bit.
Yeah, that's a great way. That's a great way to describe it. It's a little bit of it's catharsis, that's for sure. Just getting it out.
All right. Well, let's talk about the celebrating here. How are they celebrating together?
Yeah, I think it's the wins of the day, for you closed a big deal. You landed that client that you've been chasing for 6 months and they ghosted you, 27 times until they actually needed something and they called you. It's it's getting to the threshold of you're at $100,000 in monthly recurring revenue. That's a big deal. That's worth people coming alongside and patting you on the back and telling you good job. It's the isolation. It's just combating the isolation, I think, is what in my mind it kind of boils down to.
Well, I know in some franchise systems, sometimes a franchisor that I've seen over the years of doing this, that they kind of have a glass is half full mindset, or excuse me, a glass is half empty mindset. And so they think
Hmm.
when franchisees get together, not only the circling the wagons, but the celebrating, you know, I've heard over the years of franchisors saying, well, if I have some of my top performers in with some of my weaker performers, that maybe the weaker performers get disenfranchised, no pun intended, or vice versa. The top performers are thinking, oh boy, these other folks are in the system. What have you seen in these mastermind groups?
Um, yeah, there can be some of that. I think generally speaking, the people that are in the mastermind groups, they want to be in the mastermind groups. It's they're not there against their will. And if they are, they'll self-select out. That's okay. And so I think there's sort of this implication that people are there because they want to grow, they want to learn, they want to get better. They're looking for the things that the group has to offer. And so they tend to have a way to kind of self-police the negative Nellies, if you want to say it that way. They don't stick around very long because they're not given the voice because the other people really want to take advantage of the time.
Very, very, very good. Well, as we've talked about this, I think of, okay, we've gone through two of these, commiserate and celebrate,
Hmm.
and I view these kind of
Yep.
like peaks and valleys. And now we have the collaborate, and reminds me, it makes me think of a visual of almost like a stick drawing or something, where you have a couple figures, some at the top of the mountain, some at the bottom of the valley, and the collaborate's kind of the rope in between, where some folks at the top are pulling down, and maybe on the other side the others are kind of sliding down the mountain and the others are going to be pulling them back up. So talk about this collaboration that occurs in these groups and what you've seen.
Yeah, so I can think of one example. One of my clients that hosts their mastermind. The franchise system relies heavily on third-party lead generation sources, and so uh, the individual franchise owners left to their own devices are looking for new ones, trying to get rid of old ones, not getting a great ROI on 90% of the ones that they're testing. But when the group kind of comes together and begins to knowledge share, then you learn quickly which ones are good, you learn quickly which ones are bad, and it just accelerates the process so much faster, where they stop wasting time, they stop wasting money, and they actually start generating revenue because they're focused on the lead gen sources with the highest ROI for their businesses. And so that's probably one of the clearest examples in my mind of how the collaboration has helped the franchise owners generate more revenue faster because, the knowledge sharing of the lead gen sources that are and are not working.
So would you so kind of reiterating, I think, a point you're making, it sounds like in addition to that there's faster adoption of some of these new suppliers or maybe even systems or strategies that maybe corporates rolling out through these groups also.
Yeah, there's both, all of the above. That's a good way to say it.
Very, very good. Now, Paul, for a franchisor that tunes into this, we've talked a lot
Hmm.
about some of the kind of the benefits for franchisees. Um, What for a franchisor that tunes in that says, well, I guess that's great, but we've got our business, our franchise business coach that's kind of going out and doing the check-ins, and we've got this going. Do we really need another thing? How would you describe the difference between kind of a general franchise support check-ins and meetings versus this mastermind, and what might you say to that franchisor?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't think, one is meant to replace the other. We just had our franchise visit, from the field development team a couple of weeks ago. There's definitely much to be gained from that because they see what is happening in the system, bringing best practices. They have, a corporate side maybe that we don't get to see every day. But I think there's just something unique and powerful about when the group gets together and it is peer led and you get real time information. I mean, one of the things about the corporate visit, our own first and only corporate visit of the year. So these masterminds, that we're hosting is, and whether we do it or not, just the rhythm of the mastermind is meeting every 30 days, every 90 days. I mean, there is just an exchange of information and intelligence that is literally hot off the presses. There is no substitute for what is happening in the field right now versus waiting for the next 12 months for the corporate visit to transpire.
Yeah, what I really hear, and maybe this is a fourth C to add into it, but as I'm listening to you talk through this, it makes me think of community, and it
Mm.
really
Mhm.
creates within a franchise system this community of what you're describing, and even what I've seen you be able to do with some of the folks you've worked with is take a franchise system where in general, they're all wearing the same shirts and they're all using the same, branding and processes and systems. But I've really noticed that this kind of more of a community structure. So when they show up at the annual convention, it's not just, "Hey, haven't seen you in a year." Now it's real meaningful conversation. So would you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, I think you're saying exactly what I'm attempting to say, combating the isolation. And I know I've used that word several times, but um, I don't know that it can be overstated. I mean, most of us come out of corporate backgrounds. We're used to being, particularly pre-COVID, we're used to being in the office. We're used to being around people. We're used to being on teams. We're used to being in meetings with, groups of people from finance and marketing. And suddenly we find ourselves in this environment where for many franchise owners, it's a solopreneur type environment. So you are literally all by yourself. And so, creating that team atmosphere, that sense of community, I think, helps to combat what we had and maybe what we didn't know that we were walking away from, when we took the leap maybe from corporate to entrepreneur.
Oh, that's really, really good stuff. And I would be remiss if I didn't ask this just about results. I know that a lot of
Yeah.
times the franchisee that's thinking about spending their time on it is going to say, "Paul, how's this really going to help move the needle for my franchise?" Whether they're a
Yeah.
veteran in the space, or maybe they're saying, I don't want to be wasting my time here," or the new franchisee that says, "I'm frantic. I'm just trying to get some revenue in the door."
Right.
What might you say to those groups, to the franchisees that's wondering, what kind of results might I see through this?
Yeah, I think about one franchise system that I host their mastermind. Someone that when I first got involved with them, great organization. They have the ability to sell a number of products and services, but I'm not joking when I say 99.9% of their revenue in the entire system was really derived from a single kind of legacy product. And so when I got involved with them, we quickly, through the franchise owner's request, we quickly set out to create some diversity in their product portfolio. And so, 2.5 years later, I would I'd guess that most every franchise owner in that system probably has 5 or 6 products in their portfolio now that they're selling regularly. We've seen some of the new franchise owners in the system have a mix of, only 50% of their revenue is derived from the legacy product, and 50% now is derived from these other products. They sell more, the product margins are higher, the franchise owner is happier. I mean, the franchise owner is happier, the franchisor is happier because, the royalties are increasing. So I think that's just one example of how the collective power of the group can create more products, more revenue, more profit. And that was because of the mastermind.
Very, very good. And Paul, let's look at the other side for the franchisor that you're looking to maybe come in and form this, and the franchisor says, "Paul, I'm interested, but I've got some skepticism. How is this going to
Mhm.
really help move the needle, or what kind of results might I expect?" And I think your example you just shared probably applies to both, but I'd just be curious for if there'd be anything different you might add or contribute to that franchisor that might be talking to you.
Yeah, this is in no way meant. I mean, I know, at least hear the stories about sort of the antagonism that can exist between franchisors and franchisees. I have not personally experienced that in any of the franchise ownership that I've been involved in over the 10 years. But the mastermind is in no way meant to say, oh, the franchisor, is all wet. They have no idea what they're doing. This is how it really works. It's meant to work in conjunction with what the franchise system is, to enhance the areas and opportunities where things are going well, and to improve the areas where they're not. And it's also a feedback mechanism to the franchisor to say, hey, through the collective wisdom of the mastermind, here are things they really like. Here are things, areas of improvement, enhancement. So it for the franchisors who want to embrace the process, I think it can be valuable information for them also in terms of improving the product or system or service that they have.
Oh, very, very good. Well, I'd love to open this up to some questions from anyone that's tuning in here. So please type that into the chat box or raise your hand. I can unmute you while we're waiting. And Paul, while someone might be typing that in or chatting, how can people learn a little bit more about what you're doing or get in touch or connect?
Yeah. They can find me. Perisosleader.com is my website. It's Perissos leader.com. They can reach me at paul@perisosleader.com also.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, I will make sure we'll include that in some of the show notes and details here as well. I'm not seeing any other questions come in at the moment. So, with that, I'd love to close things out. And Paul, just thank you for your time here. I think this concept of mastermind group, I mean, we've worked together, collaborated together with clients through this process, and have truly seen the value added benefit, especially for an emerging franchise brand that started originally maybe with 7, 8 franchisees in the system, and now we're growing to 20 and beyond. And how this has impacted that system in particular, and how we know that, and even your own experience as being a franchisee in other systems also. So I really appreciate your time for being here, and thank you everyone for tuning in.
Yeah. Thanks, Thomas. Good to see you as always.